Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Sanhedrin, Science and Faith, Nivna, Migdal, ונעלה, לרקיע. A fascinating piece we have today, combining Gemara with Kabbalah in understanding how science doesn't really pose any kind of a challenge to faith. Science is just the unraveling, the discovery of Hashem's ways, which is part of what we have to do. What really poses a challenge to faith and to a life of faith, a life of Torah and mitzvahs, is the secular worldview that generally accompanies science, and that has its origins in the story of the Tower of Babel, the Migdal Babel, which our Gemara talks about. Our Perek, you remember, started off with Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelik le'olam haba. Every Jewish person has a piece of the world to come, and then ve'ele she'ein lehem chelik. And here's a whole long list of people who don't have a part in the world to come. And among those are the Dor HaFlaga, the generation of the Tower of Babel. And the way that story is reported in the Torah, and I bring the whole parsha here, it's 9 verses, it's very, very difficult to understand. It doesn't make any sense at all, the way it's reported in the Torah. Firstly, if you go through the psukim, all 9 verses, there's no record of them doing anything wrong. It says nothing about Avodah Zorah, it says nothing about... No, they want to build a skyscraper. Hashem then says, Vayered Hashem lirot et hayir. Hashem decides to come and look at the city and see the skyscrapers. So Hashem is on a tour, an architectural tour of a skyscraper building. And then Hashem says, oh my goodness, look at them. They're united in purpose, and nothing is beyond them. They can do what they're planning. What are they planning? We're not told they were planning anything specific. Hava neda, let's go down and confuse them with diversity without the equity and inclusion, just the plain diversity on its own, and that will ruin their plans. Why does Hashem want to ruin their plans? They want to build a skyscraper. What's so bad about this? And why is Hashem so worried that look what they could do? Hashem has plenty of ways of stopping things from developing the way people plan for them to develop. It just doesn't make much sense at all, so much so that the Gemara itself starts off by saying, as it learns this Mishnah, my Ovud, what did they do wrong? Go through the Psukim, what did they do wrong? That's the Gemara's question. And the Gemara's answers are as crazy as the whole parsha is. Rav Shila says, they said, we'll go up to Shamayim and we'll chop it down, so that we'll get rain from heaven. We'll govern the environment. We'll get rain. So in Eretz Yisrael, they heard that story and they said, but then if you want to get up to Shamayim, build your mountain on Everest. So you've already got 30 or 40,000 feet of advantage. Why would you build the skyscraper in a valley if your intention is to get height? Doesn't make sense. So then we get different views. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Ilor, they divided into 3 groups. One said they want to go up and live in Shemayim. One they want to do Avodah Zorah in Shemayim. One they'll battle with Shemayim. Rabbi Yosef Leib Bloch, the Telzerov, gave 2, or we have recorded 2 shiurei das on the Dor HaFlaga. The one was given in 1916, and the second one was given in 1927. 11 years later. And you almost see it, they're published next to each other. It's almost a continuation. You see that for those 11 years at least, this is something that troubled him. This is something he was concerned about. And he writes in the later one, I found this parsha the most difficult to understand of all the parashiyot of Torah. We're going to Sefer Vayikra now. You would think Vayikra is the hard stuff to understand. No, says the Telzerov, I've always found this story the hardest piece to understand. If you read the Psukim, they don't make sense. If you read the Medrashim that Rashi brings, they contradict each other. If you go into Kabbalah, it doesn't connect at all with everything else that's going on. And going into the Perushim of the Torah, Rashi, the Ramban, the Sforno, going into all of them, there is no satisfactory explanation. Then he says, but applying my sense of intuition deeply into understanding this, all of a sudden I had clarity. After years and years of struggling with it, he has clarity. And the clarity is based on the Ramban, where the Ramban says, Aval hayodea perush shem, yavin kavanatam mima she'amru, v'naseh lanu shem. The key to this parsha, says the Ramban, is in their statement of let's build this building and that reaches up to Shamayim, and we'll make for ourselves a name. What does that mean? ונעשה לנו שם in Posuk Dalet. Says the Ramban, כי היו קוצצים בנטיות. He uses a Kabbalistic term, which has many different angles of meaning. We'll focus on one of them. They were clipping the plants. So if you just imagine the metaphor, you've got plants growing, drawing nourishment from the earth, and they're clipping the connection between the plant and the earth. So there's no flow of nourishment. That's what the Ramban says, and as I say, kotzetzim b'netiyot is a Kabbalistic term. So there's that Ramban, and there's a Zohar. Between the Ramban and the Zohar, we have the foundation of understanding this. Omer Rabbi Abba said, Shtuta nesibu b'libayu. There was something foolish in their hearts. The tells Rav in listing all the difficulties that he has on the parasha says one of them is these were smart people. Nimrod was among them. These were very smart people. They weren't primitive people. They're going to build a skyscraper to get to Shemayim and battle with Hashem. It doesn't make sense for sophisticated people to be saying that. Says the Zohar, in their hearts there was shtus. Interesting, in their hearts. But they came with the wisdom of wickedness. Where does the Zohar see that? Where's the wickedness? Where's the shtut? Begin lenafka mirushu ila lirushu achra. Because their intention was to exit the territory of Hashem and enter a different territory. Ula'achlefa yakre liyakre nuchro. And to exchange the kavod shamayim, the belief in Hashem, for another kavod, for belief in something else. Uvekala it raza the chochmata, and in all of this parasha, there is the most amazing understanding of Kabbalistic concepts that one needs to understand. That's what the Zohar says. Furthermore, the tells Rav in his earlier shir quotes another piece of Divrei Kabbalah, where he says, Ratzu lahagia l'sfirat malchut. They wanted to get to the sphere of malchut. You know, we have the 10 sfirot, which are the channels through which the kedusha of the Shekhinah is beamed down to earth. And the lowest of those is malchut. Malchut is the point of interface between the physical world that we live in and the world of kedusha of the Shekhinah. That's the point at which they interface. And they wanted to get to that point of malchus. Sheba nichnas kava Torah mitached im ha'in sof. That's where the channel of Torah connects to the limitlessness of the Shekhinah. Uva mitztayerin kol abruim, and the whole of the universe takes its form from Malchut. Malchut translates the spiritual energies of the Shekhinah into the physical energies that we experience in the world. Kol hakochot v'chol hanagat ha'olam, all the energy and everything that happens in the world goes through Malchus. V'ratzu lahafrida mishorsha ha'eloki. And they wanted to separate Malchut from the rest of the Shekhinah. So as we said, there are 10 Sfirot. Malchut is at the bottom of them. Everything channels and goes. It goes through various processes of refinement until it gets to the point of Malchut, which is a point that can interact with the physical world. Above Malchut, it's not physical. But Malchut, it starts becoming physical. And what they wanted to do was disconnect, not the world from Malchut, but Malchut from the Shekhinah. That's what they wanted to do. So they really understood the workings of all of this. V'zeu mamash inyan kitzutz benetiyot. That's what the Ramban means about cutting the saplings off from their nourishment of the earth. So they still want Malchut, they want the sapling, and they want the tree to grow, but they're cutting it off from what is its true source of nourishment without realizing that that's its source of nourishment. And the Telz Rav goes on to explain in his second piece that they knew how much hardship and challenge nature and the world was going to bring to individual people. War and environmental challenges and illness, all the things that we know about. But they also knew that within the Bria are all the properties needed to meet every one of those challenges. There are all the medicines you need in nature. There's the ability to deal with the environmental thing. We can deal with all the challenges that will face humanity throughout history They knew that's possible to do on one condition, that we pool our resources, that we work as one. Can you imagine today if all of society, if all of humanity would pool all of its global resources, its capital, its labor, its intellect, in order to solve the big issues of the world? Says the Tel Zerov, we would succeed, and they knew that they could succeed. And you see that from Hashem saying, oh my goodness, they're getting together. They could now solve every challenge that I'm planning to bring on humanity. They could prevent it, they could avoid it, using science and technology. Because that's what the Migdal Bavel represents. The Migdal Bavel represents the first instance of global cooperation in a project of science and technology. Up until then, science and technology was individuals. People made musical instruments, people made tools, people built houses. We've got that, but we don't have society getting together globally with one purpose of harnessing science and technology, which is the building of this building, not to reach Shamayim, but to displace Shamayim. To use science and technology as a replacement of religion. Does that sound familiar? Are we reading something from the newspaper, or are we reading something in the Tanakh? To use science and technology as a replacement for faith and religion. That's what they wanted to do. Says the Rebbeinu Shalom, they will succeed. With science and technology, if the whole world gets together with science and technology, and we see that happening now, look what science can do, look what technology can do, and we're only at the cusp of it. And look where we are compared to where we were 3 years ago. That's the pace at which it's going. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, they can do anything, they can solve any problem, if they get themselves together. So what's so terrible about that? Isn't that nice? We'll have shalom, we'll have achdus. Rabbi, weren't you speaking just as I came in? You were talking about even people who have different views getting together and how amazing that is in the Mishnah that you were teaching. So what's so bad? They want shalom. What's so bad about that? Explains the Tel Zerov. וגם חשבו והבינו בחוכמתם שאם תשלט ביניהם אחדות מוחלקת וארגון גמור, if they get complete organization and unity, and they all bring their individual talents and knowledge and capability, they will find all the means needed to prevent illness and all the other natural disasters, knowing that it's all available there. But, says the Tel Zerov, in that intention was tamun regesh ra hachafetz lehishtachrer mehashgacha. But deep in their subconscious, there was something else going on here. This wasn't just about solving human problems. If this was a group of scientists working to solve the problems of humankind, that would be fine, says the Rebbeinu Shalom. Good luck to them, and they will succeed. But there was another dynamic. The dynamic was to liberate themselves from the power of Hashgacha, from Hashem's watching over the world. Why do you want to liberate yourself? Because that imposes responsibility. If you believe in Hashem, that Hashem is running the world, then if there's a drought, I've got to daven. If there's an earthquake, I've got to look at what have I done wrong. If there's a famine, we've got to do something about it. We've got to fast and do something. We don't want to be in that situation. Why don't we use science and technology so that we can master the environment without having to resort to our relationship with Hashem in order to do so? It follows on so naturally from yesterday's shiur, where we talked about lifting ourselves up morally and ethically lifts the whole universe up. They didn't want a connection between morality and universal and the universe's performance, science and technology. They didn't want nature to be a reaction to morality. They wanted each person choose your own morality, separation of church and state. Nobody's going to tell you how to live your life. Live your life however you want. What we'll do about the disasters that face humanity, we'll use science and technology to solve them. No, says the Rebbeinu Shalom, I want that they're vulnerable enough that when things are going difficulty, nature is my way of communicating with the world, with individuals and with society. Somebody gets sick, that's a message. Somebody loses money, that's a message. There's a natural disaster, that's a message. It's the way I communicate. And I want them to respond with greater tzidkus, with greater righteousness. I want them to do tshuva. I want them to learn. I want them to be kind to one another in response to the disasters. But if science and technology is going to replace emunah, is going to replace hashgacha, then you have separated morality from nature. And that's the essence of secularity. That's the problem with science and religion. The problem is the separation of morality and nature. Whereas yesterday and today we're talking about how inextricably linked they are. And by increasing your morality, you uplift nature. And by corrupting your morality, you corrupt nature. That linkage is exactly what they wanted to break. And that's what the story of the Dor Haflaga is about. It's not about the skyscraper and the building and coming together. It's the desire to replace Hashgacha with science and technology. And that's why the Ribbono Shel Olam has to, so to say, come down. Because our job is to bring the Shekhinah down into the world, not to replace the Shekhinah with technology. So the Ribbono Shel Olam says we have to go down. They're not bringing us down. We have to go down, and we have to see that they don't have this capability to get together, because, in other words, Hashem doesn't punish them. There's no flood. There's no fire that comes. There's no earthquake that comes. He just makes it difficult for them to communicate with each other, so that they're unable to unite in order to execute their plan, which would have been a great plan if it wasn't for the negative intention. If subconsciously, the Torah reveals that subconsciously what they really wanted was to de-link faith and hashgacha from science and nature. And that, at the end of the day, is the world in which we live today. A world where that is the real issue. The real issue is not, are you conservative, are you liberal, are you right, are you left, are you Jewish, are you Gentile, are you American, are you Canadian, or German, or French. Those are small issues. The real divide is, do we understand the link between faith and nature, and that they impact on one another, and the way to elevate and improve nature and the environment is, in addition to doing all the physical things, which of course we have to do, in addition to that, elevating our level of morality and our shmirat Torah mitzvot, the way we relate to Hashem through the Torah and through His mitzvahs? Or are we in the belief system and the worldview that science and nature can solve its own problems, and religion is for shul and for the churches and the mosques? You go there and you do your religious stuff. There's no connection. That's the essential polarization of the generation in which we live. Do we believe, not just believe in faith, do we believe that faith and nature are inextricably linked? Or do we believe that faith is personal and private, and nature is universal, and science will solve nature's problems, and faith and religion is for the individual to decide himself?